Have you ever found yourself stuck in a cycle of overthinking, paralyzed by endless options and the fear of making the wrong choice? You're not alone. We've all been there, caught in the web of doubt and uncertainty, wondering what's the right thing to do. But here's the thing. What if I told you that the answer isn't about finding the perfect decision, but about making decisions that work? Welcome to the world of pragmatism, where the power lies not in theory, but in real, practical action. In this video, we're diving deep into the art of pragmatic decision-making, an approach that cuts through the noise and gives you the tools to act decisively and effectively, no matter the situation. Forget about waiting for the perfect moment or the right answer. If you're ready to stop overcomplicating things and start making decisions that actually move you forward, then stick with me. By the end of this video, you'll have a fresh, no-nonsense perspective on how to make smarter choices and take control of your path. Let's get into it. Number 1. The reality check. You know, sometimes we spend so much time in our heads, overthinking every decision, trying to make it perfect, and it paralyzes us. We think, what if I make the wrong choice? Or, what if this isn't the right time? Now here's the thing. What if I told you that waiting for the perfect decision is actually the worst thing you could do? Yes, trust me on this. It's time for a reality check. We've all been there, haven't we? Stuck in that never-ending loop of indecision, fearing the worst outcome, and not wanting to make a move because, well, what if it's the wrong one? Maybe you've been there at work, choosing between two equally good but different opportunities, or in your personal life, unsure if you should take that leap of faith. The anxiety of making a mistake keeps you stuck, and before you know it, days turn into weeks and weeks into months. But here's the catch. Nothing's happening. You're just floating along, stuck in a comfort zone, paralyzed by the possibility of failure. So, here's the strategy. Forget the quest for perfection. Instead, focus on the practical reality of the situation. Ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen if I make this decision? And more importantly, what's the cost of doing nothing? Sounds simple, right? But here's why it works. Human brains are wired to avoid pain, and that's why we overthink, constantly calculating risks. But when we stop and ask ourselves, what am I avoiding by not deciding? We often realize that the cost of indecision is much higher than the cost of a bad decision. Taking action, even if it's imperfect, is the best way forward. I know this might sound a little too straightforward, but hear me out. Let me share an example. A while back, I was at a crossroads in my career. I had two offers on the table, and both had their pros and cons. For days, I went back and forth, each day convincing myself that I had to make the perfect choice. I thought about it in circles until I was dizzy, until one day I realized I was so stuck in the perfect decision mindset that I hadn't made any decision at all. So, I sat down, looked at the options again, and asked myself, what's the worst that could happen? The truth was, neither option was going to ruin my life. Both paths had risks, sure, but they were also full of opportunities. That was my reality check. I made a choice. And you know what? It worked out fine. In fact, I ended up growing more from that decision than I ever would have by waiting for the perfect one. This isn't about being reckless. It's about reclaiming your power. By facing the reality of the situation, you strip away the fantasy of perfection and take control of your choices. It's about realizing that every choice comes with a trade-off, and no decision is truly risk-free. When you make a decision based on reality rather than fear or fantasy, you start to trust yourself more. This is about reclaiming your space, your peace, and your confidence. You stop overthinking and start doing. And that's a game changer. So, the next time you find yourself stuck in that loop of overanalysis, remember, the reality check is your key to freedom. Stop waiting for the perfect moment, because it's never coming. It's your decisions, imperfect, messy, and real, that lead to the best growth. Your life is waiting for you to make the call. Don't let fear keep you paralyzed. Your space, your peace, and your future are all within reach. Just take that first step. Number 2, the emotion overrider. You ever find yourself in a situation where your emotions are taking the wheel and you're just along for the ride? Maybe it's that feeling of anger bubbling up in a heated conversation, or the overwhelming anxiety when a big decision looms over you. You know the type. You let your emotions take control, and suddenly, logic and reason feel like distant memories. Now, I know what you're thinking, but aren't emotions supposed to guide us? Aren't they part of who we are? Yes, I get it. But trust me on this. Sometimes, the best thing you can do is override them. We've all been there, right? Whether it's at work, in a relationship, or just navigating life in general, emotions can hijack our thoughts and lead us down paths we later regret. You've probably found yourself snapping at someone when you didn't mean to, or hesitating to make a bold decision because you were gripped by fear. Those moments when emotions take charge, you can almost feel yourself being swept away, unable to stop the tide. It's frustrating, because logically, you know better. But the heart, or the gut, or the fear, it's loud and it's convincing. Here's the strategy: the emotion overrider. It sounds dramatic, but hear me out. This is about training yourself to recognize when your emotions are driving the bus, and then gently but firmly stepping into the driver's seat yourself. The key is to pause before reacting. Instead of letting that rush of anger or fear dictate your actions, take a step back and ask yourself, what is the most logical choice right now? This isn't about suppressing your feelings or ignoring them. No, it's about acknowledging them and then deciding to move through them, not around them. It's like putting on a pair of emotional glasses that let you see the situation for what it truly is, not through the filter of your emotions. Let me give you an example. A few months ago, I was in a meeting with a colleague who was absolutely railing on me about a project I was handling. I felt that familiar knot of frustration building in my chest, my heart rate picking up. My first instinct? To snap back, defend myself, maybe even get a little passive-aggressive. I could already hear myself saying something I'd regret, but then I paused. I took a deep breath, acknowledged the anger, but chose to override it. I calmly asked myself, what's the best response here? And you know what? By not reacting out of anger, I ended up taking control of the situation and steering the conversation into a productive direction. That moment was a huge win, not just for my career, but for my emotional growth. Here's what I want you to take away from this. By mastering the emotion overrider, you regain control over your decisions and interactions. This is about reclaiming your space, your peace, and your dignity. When you let emotions rule your actions, you're letting something outside of you have the final say. But when you override them, you're making a choice to act in alignment with your values, not your impulses. It's a small step, but it's powerful. So the next time you feel that surge of emotion, pause, just for a moment. Breathe, and then consciously choose your response. Because your emotions might want to take over, but you get to decide who's really in charge. Your space, your peace, and your dignity are yours to protect. And when you override those emotions, you show up stronger, more intentional, and unapologetically in control. Number 3. The 24-hour rule. You ever make a decision and then immediately second-guess it? Maybe you've impulsively responded to an email, said something you didn't mean in a conversation, or bought something you didn't really need. You know, those moments where you feel like your brain went into overdrive, and now you're sitting there wondering if you should have just paused for a second. Now, What if I told you that pausing could be your secret weapon for making better choices? Yes, trust me on this. Enter the 24-hour rule. Now, I know what you might be thinking. I don't have time to sit around for 24 hours. I need to make decisions fast. But hold on a second. We've all been there, right? Rushing to make decisions, feeling like we need to act in the heat of the moment. But here's the thing. When we're in that fast-paced, high-stress mode, our brains can't always think clearly. It's like trying to drive a car while the windshield's fogged up. You can't see everything you need to. So, how do we clear that fog? By giving ourselves a break. That's where the 24-hour rule comes in. Here's how it works. For big decisions, whether it's a work decision, personal relationship, or financial choice, give yourself a full 24 hours to step back before you make the final call. Sounds easy, right? But it's more powerful than you think. This brief timeout allows your mind to breathe, recalibrate, and process things with a little more clarity. It's not about being indecisive. It's about giving yourself the space to make an intentional, thoughtful choice rather than a reactive one. Your emotions settle, and logic has a chance to catch up. Let me paint a picture for you. A few months ago, I was offered a pretty amazing job opportunity. On paper, it seemed perfect. I was ready to say yes, but something in my gut was telling me to pause. I thought, am I just excited because this looks good? Or is this actually a smart move for my career? So, I decided to apply the 24-hour rule. I slept on it. Took some time to think about my long-term goals, how this job would affect my lifestyle, and what it would mean for my personal happiness. The next day, after giving myself that time to reflect, I realized that while the job was exciting, it wasn't the right fit for me long-term. If I had rushed into the decision, I would have said yes without giving it proper thought. That 24-hour break gave me the clarity I needed to make a more grounded decision. This isn't about procrastination. It's about empowering yourself with the ability to think through your choices, calm your nerves, and avoid the regret that comes from rushed decisions. When you take that step back, you're not just protecting yourself from poor decisions, but you're actively respecting yourself. You're saying, I deserve the time and space to make a decision that aligns with my goals, my values, and my well-being. It's a simple yet incredibly effective practice that can completely change how you approach decisions. So, here's the takeaway. When in doubt, take a breather. Apply the 24-hour rule and let it work its magic. Give yourself permission to not rush, to not feel pressured, and to reclaim your peace of mind. Your space, your time, and your choices are precious. So, make them count. Number 4, the short-term sacrifice. Here's a truth bomb for you. Sometimes the only way to get what you truly want is by making a sacrifice in the short term. Yeah, I know it doesn't sound glamorous, but stick with me on this one. You might be thinking, who wants to give up something now for the possibility of something better later? Well, trust me, this little strategy is a game changer when you're trying to level up, whether it's in your career, relationships, or personal growth. You know the type. You're working hard, juggling priorities, and still, there's that feeling of being stuck or overwhelmed. We've all been there. You know you want to achieve something bigger, but the immediate rewards or comfort are just too tempting. Maybe it's hitting the snooze button instead of getting up for that early morning workout, or choosing the short-term pleasure of a night out over the long-term gain of saving for your goals. It feels good now, but what about later? You've been there, right? You've faced that crossroad where your future self is begging you to hold off just a little longer, but the current moment feels so irresistible. Here's the thing. The short-term sacrifice isn't about denial, it's about choice. It's about giving up a little bit of comfort or pleasure today to build something better for tomorrow. This isn't about punishing yourself. It's about investing in your future, even if it means enduring a little discomfort now. It's like planting seeds today and waiting for them to grow into something amazing down the road. So, what's the psychology behind this? Well, when you're willing to make that sacrifice, whether it's saying no to instant gratification, working extra hours, or cutting back on certain comforts, you're training your mind to think beyond the present moment. You're learning to delay gratification, which is a proven strategy for long-term success. Let me share a personal story. A few years ago, I was working my way through a tough financial situation. I had dreams of traveling and upgrading my lifestyle, but my budget just wasn't where I wanted it to be. I had to make some serious sacrifices, no spontaneous trips, no fancy nights out, and definitely no impulse shopping. At first, it felt like I was missing out on so much, like I was depriving myself. But over time, I saw the payoff. By focusing on saving and budgeting, I was able to take the trip of a lifetime that I had dreamed about for years. If I hadn't been willing to make those small, short-term sacrifices, I wouldn't have been able to enjoy that experience. The lesson: a little bit of discomfort now can lead to something much greater later. This is the part where it gets real. The short-term sacrifice is about your peace of mind. It's about making decisions that align with your bigger picture, not just your current desires. It's easy to fall into the trap of avoiding discomfort or putting things off because it feels like the hard choice. But let me tell you, choosing the hard path now can lead to an easier, more fulfilling future. You're not just saving money or working longer hours, you're building the foundation for your success, peace, and happiness. So, the next time you find yourself at a crossroads, take a moment. Ask yourself, what's worth more to me right now? The comfort of this moment or the satisfaction of a bigger win later? Because by embracing those short-term sacrifices, you're not just changing your actions, you're shaping your future. Your space, your peace, and your dignity are all tied to this. You're in control, and every small sacrifice you make now is an investment in a more empowered you. Number 5, the bias buster. Let's talk about something most people don't even realize is happening. The biases we carry around every single day. I know it sounds a little heavy, but trust me, once you understand it, you'll see how powerful it is to bust those biases wide open. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Bias? What does that even have to do with me? I'm open-minded, I don't judge. Well, hang tight. You might be surprised. We all have biases. Yes, even you. I'm not talking about the obvious prejudices or stereotypes, but the small, sneaky ones that shape how we see the world and how we make decisions. Ever had a gut feeling about someone based on nothing more than their appearance? Or maybe you've ever found yourself dismissing an idea because it was suggested by someone you didn't quite click with. We've all been there, whether we're aware of it or not. Biases sneak in without an invitation, affecting everything from who we hire to what food we choose to eat. The question is, how do we stop them from controlling us? Here's where the bias buster strategy comes into play. It's a simple but powerful way to challenge your automatic assumptions and open your mind. What if, the next time you're about to make a decision or judgment, you stopped for just a second and asked, what's influencing me right now? It sounds so small, but that question changes everything. It forces you to take a step back and be aware of the biases that might be coloring your choices. Now, why does this work? It's all about self-awareness. When you interrupt the automatic thought process and ask yourself why you're thinking what you're thinking, you're creating space for logic and empathy to take over. That's when you can truly decide if your actions are based on sound reasoning or just the influence of an unconscious bias. I know, this might sound like a lot of mental gymnastics, but trust me, it's powerful. You don't have to go around with a list of biases in your head. Just the awareness that they exist and that you have control over them is a game changer. Let me give you a real-life example. A few months ago, I was in a meeting where a new team member presented an idea. Now, this person was someone I didn't know well, and frankly, I wasn't sure they would have anything valuable to say. I was about to dismiss their idea. My bias was telling me they didn't have enough experience. But then I stopped myself. I remembered my own advice. What's influencing me right now? And I realized it wasn't logic, it was just an assumption. So I listened to the idea, and guess what? It was brilliant. By challenging my initial bias, I was able to not only grow professionally, but also build a stronger, more open relationship with that colleague. That's the power of the bias buster. It's not just about being more inclusive or fair. It's about strengthening your decision-making skills and giving everyone, including yourself, a fair shot. This simple strategy doesn't just benefit others, it empowers you. It's a tool that helps you stop second-guessing yourself or feeling trapped by unconscious influences. It's about reclaiming your agency, your clarity, and your true potential. So here's your challenge. The next time you're about to make a snap judgment, pause. Take a moment to ask yourself, what's influencing me right now? That single question is your shortcut to making clearer, more conscious choices. You'll be amazed at how this tiny shift can open up so many new possibilities. By practicing this, you're not just busting biases, you're breaking free from the limitations they place on you. Your space, your peace, and your dignity. They all begin with making the conscious decision to leave biases behind. Number 6, the all-in method. Here's a truth bomb for you. Sometimes playing it safe is the riskiest thing you can do. Now, I know that might sound a little offbeat, but bear with me. How many times have you held back from going all in on something? Maybe it was a big project at work, a new hobby you were excited about, or even that relationship you weren't sure about. You've probably thought, I'll just dip my toes in first. But here's the thing, toe dipping rarely gets you anywhere. Yes, trust me on this. The all-in method is a game changer. You know the type. The person who's always just testing the waters, never fully committing. We've all been there, hesitant, unsure, not wanting to fail or make a mistake. And it's so tempting to stay in that comfortable, safe zone. But here's where things get interesting. The truth is, when you hold back, you're not really giving yourself a shot. When you don't commit 100%, you're giving 50% of yourself, and guess what? You'll get 50% back. So, what if you took that leap? What if you went all in, full force, no holding back? The all-in method is about committing to something fully, without hesitation, second-guessing, or letting fear hold you back. It's not about being reckless, it's about putting your whole heart and mind into what you're doing. The beauty of this method is that it creates momentum. When you go all in, you create the energy to push forward and embrace whatever comes next. And let's be real, when was the last time you accomplished something amazing by half trying? Exactly. Now, here's the science behind it. When you commit fully to something, your brain shifts. It starts seeing opportunities instead of obstacles, and your actions align with your goals. The truth is, commitment increases your chances of success. And I know it sounds a little obvious. But here's the kicker. It's not just about achieving the goal. It's about building confidence and resilience along the way. When you're all in, you learn, grow, and adapt, even in the face of failure. And let's be honest, failure's not the end. It's just a stepping stone to success. Let me take you back a few years. I was at a crossroads with a big project, one of those make-or-break moments. I had the option to ease into it, take the slow route, and test the waters. But instead, I threw myself in. I went all in. I worked late nights, got creative, put myself out there, and yes, made mistakes along the way. But here's the twist. Because I was all in, I was able to pivot quickly, adjust, and fix things in real time. The project ended up being a huge success, and it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't fully committed from the start. So, here's the empowering part. The all-in method isn't just about success, it's about owning your path. It's about knowing that you've given everything you've got, and that no matter what happens, you're walking away stronger and more capable. You're reclaiming your agency, your confidence, and your inner power. Imagine never having to wonder, what if? Because you know you gave it your all. Now I challenge you. The next time you're on the edge of something big, don't hold back. Go all in. Your space, your peace, and your dignity are waiting for you on the other side. And trust me, when you commit fully, you're not just changing your outcome, you're changing your mindset, your confidence, and your life. Number 7. The trade-off tracker. Here's a little secret. Every decision you make comes with a trade-off. Yes, every single one. Whether it's choosing between working late or spending time with friends, deciding to splurge on something you want now versus saving for later, or even the simple choice of how you spend your free time. There's always something on the other side of that decision. Now you might be thinking, well, that's obvious, right? But here's the kicker. Most of us don't consciously track those trade-offs. We just make them and move on. But what if you could track those trade-offs and use them to make smarter decisions? You know the type. The person who feels like they're always stuck in the same cycle, working too hard, feeling like they're missing out, or caught in a never-ending game of, I should have chosen differently. We've all been there, right? Maybe you've been juggling work, personal life, and goals, only to find that no matter how much you give, there's always something that slips through the cracks. It can feel like you're stuck in a loop of making one choice, only to regret it later. So, why not stop and take control? Imagine if you could look at each decision, not just in isolation, but through the lens of the trade-offs you're making. This is where the trade-off tracker comes in. It's a simple strategy that can change how you make decisions, big or small. The idea is to consciously track the trade-offs you're making with every choice, so you can see the long-term effects and make better choices for yourself. Here's how it works. For every decision, think about what you're gaining and what you're losing. Instead of just asking, what do I want to do right now? Ask, what am I willing to give up for this? It's like a mini cost-benefit analysis for your life. Trust me on this. When you get used to tracking your trade-offs, you'll start seeing patterns and gaining clarity on where you want to direct your energy. Now, let me share a personal example. A few months ago, I had this opportunity to work on a project that would require extra hours and sacrifices in my personal time. I could have just jumped into it without thinking much, but instead, I used the trade-off tracker method. I asked myself, if I take on this project, what will I have to sacrifice? Well, I'd lose time with my family, risk feeling burnt out, and push my self-care routine to the side. But the gain, a major career boost, a new skill, and more recognition in my field. After weighing the trade-offs, I realized it wasn't worth sacrificing my peace for this particular opportunity. I declined the project, and guess what? Another, better opportunity came around that was a better fit without those major sacrifices. It's not always about what's in front of you, it's about what you're willing to trade for it. The beauty of using the trade-off tracker is that it empowers you to make decisions that align with your values and goals. It's not about regretting the choices you didn't make, but about making decisions with awareness, knowing exactly what you're getting into. This is how you reclaim your time, your priorities, and your mental well-being. It's about taking ownership of your choices and not letting life's decisions happen to you, but happening for you. So, The next time you're faced with a choice, big or small, ask yourself, what's the trade-off here? Your time, your energy, your peace, it's all valuable. You deserve to make decisions that honor your boundaries, your well-being, and your growth. Track those trade-offs, own them, and take control of your life. Because when you can see the trade-off, you can make the choice that truly serves you, not just in the moment, but for the long run. Your space, your peace, and your dignity are worth the trade. Number 8. The best worst-case scenario. What if I told you that the best way to handle your fears and anxiety is to imagine the worst-case scenario? I know, it sounds a little counterintuitive, right? We've all been told to avoid thinking about the worst, that it only feeds our anxiety. But hear me out. What if facing your worst-case scenario head-on is exactly what you need to regain control, get clarity, and feel empowered in the face of uncertainty? Yes, trust me on this. Sometimes the best way to overcome fear is to go straight through it. You know the type, the person who's constantly putting things off, second-guessing decisions, or getting caught up in what-ifs. We've all been there. Maybe you're worried about taking a big risk, starting a new project, or making a bold life decision. You picture every possible outcome. Somewhere in your mind, you're already seeing failure, disappointment, or regret. The thing is, that cycle of worry and hesitation doesn't help you make a decision. It just keeps you stuck. So, how do you break that cycle? You do something completely unexpected. You embrace the worst-case scenario. Here's the strategy. The next time you're faced with a big decision or scary challenge, instead of focusing on all the possible good outcomes, ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? Really dig into it. What's the absolute worst-case scenario? Picture it in detail, as if it were happening right in front of you. I know it sounds terrifying, but here's the twist. Once you've faced that worst-case scenario, you'll realize it's often not as bad as your imagination made it out to be. In fact, it's rarely as catastrophic as we fear. You'll find that you can handle it, or you'll discover solutions you never considered. Let me give you an example from my own life. A few months ago, I had a huge opportunity to pitch a project at work. The stakes were high, and I was nervous. I could feel the pressure building up, imagining all the ways the pitch could fail. So, I asked myself, what's the worst that could happen? Well, the worst-case scenario was that the pitch would flop, I'd lose face, and maybe even my job. Sounds pretty terrifying, right? But then I asked myself, what would I do if that happened? I realized I'd survive it. I'd find another job. I'd learn from my mistakes and grow. It wasn't the end of the world. And guess what? The pitch went really well. But the point is, by confronting that worst-case scenario, I took away its power. I felt calmer, more confident, and more prepared. This is about reclaiming your peace. This is about facing what scares you head-on and realizing that, no matter what happens, you can handle it. When you confront the worst-case scenario, you remove its control over your life. You stop letting fear dictate your decisions. Instead of over-explaining, second-guessing, or backing down, you step into your power because you know you're prepared for whatever might come. You own your choices, and you trust yourself to adapt, learn, and grow. So, the next time you're feeling overwhelmed by a big decision, take a moment to ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? Then breathe, and realize that you can face it. Your space, your peace, and your dignity are worth taking control of your fears and using them to fuel your growth. You've got this, and you'll always come out stronger on the other side. Number 9, the reverse engineering approach. What if I told you that the key to achieving your goals isn't to start at the beginning, but to work backward? I know that might sound a bit wild. After all, isn't the natural way to go from point A to point B. But trust me on this, the reverse engineering approach can flip the script on your progress and give you clarity, direction, and results faster than you might think. Now, I can already hear you thinking, that sounds great in theory, but how does that actually work in real life? Stick with me here, and I'll show you how this strategy could change the way you approach any challenge. You know the type, the ones who get overwhelmed by a big goal, unsure where to start, or they start strong but lose steam along the way. We've all been there. We set ourselves up with grand ideas, but then we get stuck in the details, paralyzed by the sheer size of what we have to do. Maybe you've set a personal goal, like writing a book, launching a business, or even planning a trip. At first, the excitement is there, but as you start moving forward, you can feel yourself getting bogged down. The end goal feels so far out of reach that you don't know how to take the first step. And guess what? That's exactly where reverse engineering comes in. Here's the twist. Instead of starting from the beginning, start with the end. That's right. Imagine you've already reached your goal. Picture it clearly in your mind. What does it look like? What steps did you take to get there? Now, step by step, work backward to figure out how you got to that point. This strategy doesn't just help you break down the process, it forces you to think critically about the real steps and resources needed to make it happen. The reason it works so well is that it cuts through the overwhelming how-to clutter and gives you a clear roadmap. I'll give you a real example from my own life. A while ago, I decided I wanted to create a successful YouTube channel. Now, I had no clue how to make that happen. The idea of making videos, finding a niche, and growing an audience felt impossible. Instead of getting lost in the details, I started with the end. I imagined my channel having thousands of views, subscribers, and engaging content. I pictured the content being popular, well-edited, and even monetized. Once I had that vision, I asked myself, what steps would I need to take to get there? I realized I needed to be consistent with content, optimize my videos for search, and engage with my audience. I broke it down further. What kind of camera did I need? What editing software? How much time would I have to dedicate to making this happen? Working backward allowed me to see the missing pieces I'd never have considered otherwise, and I could create a tangible plan to fill those gaps. What reverse engineering does is simple. It helps you eliminate confusion, stop procrastinating, and approach your goals strategically. You're not just throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping something sticks. Instead, you're reclaiming control and focusing your energy where it matters most. This approach frees you from overthinking and allows you to take action without hesitation. This is about reclaiming your space and your peace. By working backward, you cut through the noise, avoid wasting time, and gain a deep sense of direction. You stop doubting yourself and start trusting the process because you've laid out a clear path from where you are now to where you want to be. Don't let fear of the unknown hold you back. You've got the power to reverse engineer your success, piece by piece, and create the life you want. So the next time you find yourself facing a daunting goal, take a step back, imagine the finish line, and reverse engineer your path from there. Your space, your peace, and your dignity all come from knowing that you can break any goal down into manageable steps. And trust me, when you follow this strategy, you'll see results that are far more attainable than you ever imagined. Number 10. The cost of inaction. What if I told you that the price of inaction is often higher than the cost of failure? I know it sounds dramatic, but stick with me for a moment. We're all guilty of it. Putting things off, waiting for the right moment, or hoping that the perfect conditions will just magically appear. But here's the catch. The longer you wait, the more expensive inaction becomes. Now you might be thinking, but how bad could it really be? I'm not hurting anyone by taking my time, right? Yes, trust me on this. Inaction costs you far more than you realize, and in ways you might not even see coming. We've all been there. You know the type, the person who procrastinates on starting that big project, or someone who avoids that difficult conversation because they're scared of the discomfort it might bring. Maybe it's you. Maybe you've been putting off your goals, waiting for the perfect moment when everything aligns, or you're telling yourself that tomorrow is a better day to start. We tell ourselves, "I'll get to it later," but we forget that time doesn't wait for us. Inaction is the thief of opportunity, and it creeps up on us when we're not paying attention. Here's the twist. Every moment you wait, you're paying a hidden price. The longer you let those decisions or actions linger, the harder it becomes to act later. Not only do you lose time, but you also lose momentum, confidence, and often the ability to control the situation. Imagine a small crack in a window. You don't fix it right away, thinking it's not that big of a deal. Over time, that crack spreads, the damage worsens, and suddenly it's a much more expensive fix. It's the same with inaction in your life. Every delay adds up, and what seems like a harmless choice to procrastinate can snowball into a mountain of regret and missed opportunities. Let me give you a real-life example from my own experience. There was a time I had an opportunity to collaborate on a project with a big client. The catch? I needed to submit a proposal, and I had just a few days to get it done. At first, I thought, I'll work on it tomorrow, but tomorrow turned into next week, and next week, well, I was still too busy with other tasks. Eventually, the deadline passed, and that opportunity slipped through my fingers. A small decision to procrastinate cost me more than just that potential income. It cost me the confidence I had in myself to make quick decisions. Looking back, the price of inaction wasn't just the lost opportunity. It was the self-doubt that crept in when I realized I let fear of failure stop me from acting. Now, think about how inaction shows up in your life. Maybe you're avoiding something you've been meaning to start, like a new career path, a fitness routine, or even a personal goal. The more you wait, the more you fall into the trap of thinking, maybe it's not meant to be, or I'll just try again next year. But in reality, every moment you hold back is a chance that slips away. The true cost of inaction isn't just missed opportunities. It's the loss of the life you could have had. It's the mental toll that builds up over time, leaving you feeling stuck, frustrated, and disconnected from your own potential. This is about reclaiming your space and your peace. Every small step you take today reduces the price of inaction tomorrow. It's about making the decision to move forward, even if it feels uncomfortable or uncertain. The hardest part is always starting, but once you do, you'll realize that the fear of failure was never as costly as the regret of doing nothing. The longer you wait, the heavier the price becomes, not just in your actions, but in your mindset, your confidence, and your life. So, don't let inaction dictate your future. Your space, your peace, and your dignity are worth more than the comfort of procrastination. The price of inaction is steep, but the cost of moving forward is priceless. Take the first step, and you'll see just how much your life can change when you choose to act now. Number 11. The comfort zone. Expander. What if I told you that the key to unlocking your full potential isn't about stepping outside of your comfort zone, it's about expanding it? Yes, trust me on this. We've all heard it 1,000 times. Get out of your comfort zone. But here's the problem. Getting out of it can feel like jumping off a cliff without a parachute. It's intimidating, it's scary, and frankly, it's exhausting. But what if you didn't have to face that fear of the unknown so intensely? What if instead you could grow your comfort zone slowly, little by little, until it's stretched far beyond where it's ever been before. You know the type. The person who is constantly chasing after big, uncomfortable leaps, pushing themselves harder and harder until they crash and burn. They try to force themselves into growth by making huge, risky moves, things like quitting their job without a backup plan or signing up for something they have no experience in just to prove they can do it. I get it. There's a whole motivational movement around jumping in with both feet. But here's the thing. It's not always sustainable, and often it only leaves you feeling more anxious or defeated. The idea of dramatically pushing past your comfort zone can feel like too much pressure. That's where the comfort zone expander comes in. Instead of jumping straight out, we start small. Think of it as gently stretching your zone until it grows to include those things that once felt terrifying. You're still pushing boundaries, but in a way that feels manageable. Imagine this. You're not scaling a mountain overnight, but you're taking steady steps toward it. Psychologically, our brains are wired to resist drastic change. But if you ease yourself into new challenges, you're rewiring your mind to view them as part of your comfort zone. This way, you're expanding instead of leaping, and that makes all the difference. Here's a personal story. A while back, I had a huge presentation to give. Public speaking has always been my Achilles heel. In my mind, speaking in front of a crowd was the ultimate test of survival. But instead of throwing myself into a packed auditorium, I decided to start small. I began by speaking in front of a mirror. Then I spoke to a friend, then a small group of people I trusted, and eventually I worked my way up to a full-on presentation. Each step was a little uncomfortable, but it never felt impossible. By the time I was in front of a big audience, my comfort zone had stretched enough that I didn't freeze up. I felt confident and capable. I didn't have to leap, I expanded, and that shift made all the difference. Now, think about how you can apply this to your own life. Maybe it's a new project at work that feels overwhelming. Instead of diving in head first, how about breaking it down into smaller, bite-sized challenges? Or maybe it's a social situation that makes you anxious. Start with short, casual interactions with people you trust, then gradually work your way up to more challenging ones. Each small victory helps stretch your comfort zone just a little further, until one day, what once terrified you feels like second nature. This is about reclaiming your peace, your confidence, and your self-respect. It's about knowing that you can grow and challenge yourself without feeling the need to force everything to happen at once. Every step you take is a win. There's no shame in growing at your own pace. Your comfort zone doesn't need to be a box. It can be a vast, ever-expanding space where you thrive on your terms. So, here's your takeaway. Stop thinking of your comfort zone as a limit. It's a starting point. With every small action, every baby step, you're creating a new boundary for yourself. And before you know it, you'll look back and realize just how far you've come. Your space, your peace, and your dignity are worth expanding. Start small, but think big, and watch your world grow in ways you never thought possible. Number 12. The evidence collector. What if I told you the key to making smarter decisions and finding more clarity in your life isn't about being decisive right off the bat? It's about collecting evidence. Now, you might be thinking, wait, am I becoming some kind of detective? And yes, trust me on this, sometimes you have to play detective in your own life. But here's the twist. You're not looking for the truth in some dramatic crime show kind of way. You're gathering small, but incredibly powerful, pieces of evidence that will make your next move far more informed and confident. It's a game changer when you realize that the pressure to have all the answers immediately can be totally unrealistic. You know the type. Those people who always rush to make decisions, acting like they've got it all figured out, even when the facts aren't clear. Maybe you've even been that person. You've felt that need to be the one who makes a choice fast, only to later wonder, did I make the right call? We've all been there, haven't we? Hurrying into decisions because of fear, social pressure, or just not wanting to look uncertain. But what if, instead of jumping to conclusions, you took a moment to gather all the clues? What if you could make choices based on real, hard evidence, not just gut feelings or assumptions? This is where the evidence collector mindset comes in. Instead of deciding based on your immediate emotions or instincts, you pause, gather facts, and evaluate. The key here is to step back and approach situations with the curiosity of a detective. Take the time to look at the context, seek out different perspectives, and note down the details you might otherwise overlook. It's not just about getting more information, it's about getting the right information. You're no longer acting on impulse, but instead, you're setting yourself up to make decisions that align with your goals and values. Let me give you a quick example. A while back, I had to decide whether to take on a new project that seemed exciting, but was also a bit of a gamble. At first, my gut told me to jump in. It seemed like the perfect opportunity, but instead of rushing in, I started collecting evidence. I researched the company's history, asked others who had worked with them, and looked at the potential risks. What I found was eye-opening. Sure, there were some great opportunities, but there were also red flags that I hadn't considered in my initial excitement. In the end, I decided not to take the project, and it turned out to be the right choice. My evidence saved me from making an impulsive, emotional decision. Here's the beauty of this strategy. By collecting evidence, you create space for clarity, and that clarity gives you confidence. You start to trust yourself more because you're making decisions based on facts, not on fear or external pressure. It's about taking back your agency. You don't have to have all the answers at once, but you do have the ability to gather the pieces that will help you see the bigger picture. It's like putting together a puzzle. Each piece matters, and with enough patience, you'll see the whole picture emerge. This isn't just a strategy for big decisions either. It can help in everyday situations, like dealing with conflicts, making life changes, or even handling stress. It's about giving yourself the grace to slow down, assess, and make choices that empower you. When you take the time to collect the evidence, you're not just reacting, you're responding with wisdom. So here's your takeaway. Next time you're facing a choice or a challenge, become the evidence collector. Instead of rushing, gather the facts, observe the situation from all angles, and let that information guide your decisions. You don't need to have everything figured out in an instant. In fact, slowing down and building a case for your choices is a powerful act of self-respect. Your space, your peace, and your dignity are built on the foundation of well-informed decisions, and that's a strength that can't be underestimated. Number 13, the tactical delay. What if I told you that sometimes the smartest move you can make is to do nothing? Yes, you heard that right. A tactical delay. You might be thinking, that doesn't sound like good advice. But hear me out. What if I told you that delaying your response or action can actually be a game changer? Now, before you roll your eyes or think this is just another one of those take your time suggestions, let's dig into why this approach is so powerful. You know the type, the person who feels the need to respond immediately. Whether it's a text, a work email, or a challenging conversation, we've all been there, right? That urge to jump in and solve the problem right away, especially when you feel the pressure. We're wired to act quickly, and let's be honest, who doesn't want to feel like they've got everything under control? But the truth is, when we act too fast, we often make decisions we later regret. And the worst part, it leaves us feeling drained, uncertain, or worse, like we've missed an opportunity to make the best choice. So here's the twist. Rather than rushing in, try something different. Instead of diving headfirst into a situation, take a step back. Give yourself a little time. The key isn't just in pausing for the sake of it, it's about creating space between the stimulus and your reaction. When you delay that initial response, whether it's a few hours or even a day, you allow your emotions to settle, your mind to clear, and new perspectives to come into focus. It's like pressing the reset button on your decision-making process. Let me give you an example from my own life. A while back, I was faced with a big decision, whether to take on a challenging project that required a lot of commitment. Initially, my gut instinct was to say yes right away. After all, the opportunity seemed amazing, and I didn't want to miss out. But something in me told me to wait. So I took a day to think it over, and during that time, I did nothing. No Googling, no brainstorming, just a little bit of breathing room. And that pause gave me clarity. The next day, I saw the project from a completely different angle. I realized that it wasn't the right time for me, and I was able to turn it down without hesitation, feeling at peace with my decision. What makes the tactical delay so effective is that it taps into the power of patience. It's not about procrastination. It's about giving yourself the space to make a decision that serves your best interests. It's about avoiding knee-jerk reactions that could lead to burnout or regret. When you take a moment to pause and reflect, you not only gain a clearer perspective, but you also feel more confident in your choices. This is how you reclaim control over your decisions and, ultimately, your life. This approach isn't just useful for big decisions, it works in everyday situations too. Whether it's dealing with a difficult conversation, managing stress, or responding to an urgent email, the tactical delay gives you the mental space to act with purpose rather than reaction. It's like training your mind to respond with intention, not impulse. And trust me, the more you practice it, the more empowered you'll feel. So next time you're faced with something that makes you want to rush in, try delaying your response. Give yourself the gift of time. It's not about avoiding action. It's about making the best possible move when the time is right. And when you do, you'll find that you're not only making better decisions, but you're also growing stronger in your ability to trust yourself and your instincts. Your space, your peace, and your dignity are yours to claim. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all, at least for a little while. Number 14, the fail-forward principle. What if I told you that failure isn't something to fear but something to embrace? Sounds counterintuitive, right? We're often told to avoid failure at all costs. Don't fail, don't mess up, don't make mistakes. But what if the key to success isn't in avoiding failure, but in failing forward? Now I know what you're thinking. Failing sounds like the last thing I want to do. But stay with me, because this might just change how you see both your mistakes and your wins. We've all been there. The feeling of missing the mark, the frustration that comes with a mistake, the nagging thought that maybe we're just not cut out for whatever it is we're trying to achieve. It's tough, right? Whether it's a project at work, a personal goal, or a big life decision, failure feels like the end of the road. But here's the thing. Failure isn't the end. It's often the beginning of something even better. This is where the fail-forward principle comes in. The idea behind it is simple, but incredibly powerful. Instead of letting failure drag you down, use it as a stepping stone to move forward. The fail-forward principle tells us that every time we stumble, we learn something. The secret is in how we respond to failure. If we look at every setback as a lesson, then suddenly failure becomes an essential part of the process. Not something to avoid, but something to seek out, because it's showing us what works and what doesn't. Let me give you an example. A while ago, I was working on a huge project. I was feeling confident. Everything was in place, or so I thought. But as things started to unfold, I hit a major roadblock. I made a huge mistake. The project didn't go as planned, and I felt like a failure. For a brief moment, I thought about throwing in the towel and just quitting, but then I remembered the fail-forward principle. Instead of wallowing in self-doubt, I took a step back and analyzed what had gone wrong. What could I have done differently? What lesson was there to learn? And sure enough, I found exactly what I needed to do better next time. That failure turned into the biggest growth opportunity of my career. I didn't just learn what didn't work. I learned how to improve, how to think smarter, and how to approach problems from a new angle. This is exactly what failing forward does for you. It's not just about the setback, it's about the comeback. It's about using each failure as fuel for the next step to push you closer to your goals. Because when you approach failure with the right mindset, you see it for what it truly is, a gift. You're gaining insight, you're gaining resilience, and ultimately, you're getting closer to the success you're after. So next time you're faced with a failure, instead of getting discouraged, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I use this to move forward? It's not about avoiding mistakes. It's about embracing them, learning from them, and then using that knowledge to power yourself to the next level. This mindset will empower you, giving you the courage to take risks and the resilience to keep going, no matter how many bumps in the road you encounter. When you fail forward, you're not just surviving failure. You're thriving because of it. You're reclaiming your space, your peace, and your dignity, because you know that no failure has the power to hold you back. And the next time you fall, you'll rise with even more strength, more wisdom, and more determination to keep moving forward. The road to success isn't straight, and it's not without its hurdles, but as long as you keep moving forward, you're always on the right path. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope this video gave you some valuable insights into the power of pragmatism in decision-making and helped you see how you can apply it in your own life. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like. It really means a lot. And don't forget to subscribe if you want more content like this, where we explore practical, real-world strategies to make life a little easier. If you know someone who could benefit from a more pragmatic approach to decision-making, share this video with them. Let's spread the word and help others take control of their choices too. I'd love to hear your thoughts or any personal experiences you've had with decision-making in the comments below. Let's create a conversation and learn from each other. Remember, the decisions you make today shape your tomorrow. You've got the power to make things happen. No need for perfection, just practical steps forward. Keep taking action, and I'll see you in the next video.